The illegal immigration border situation seems to be really hotting up since Trump won the election and has been given this clear mandate. And along with the governors and different community leaders coming forward in various states, stating that they're going to do everything they can to obstruct the process of removing from what the borders are says. He'll be focusing initially on people who've committed crimes, who've come to the country illegally, and focusing on dealing with them first, which seems like a logical strategy. When Cuomo interviewed him, he a few points were brought up. He referred to some policies that were in place, like the Remain in Mexico, that Biden reversed immediately by when he came into when he started his administration.
Get the graphics going. Obama, we'll start with him. He left office 400,000 illegal border encounters. In Trump's first year, border crossings dropped to a record low of 300,000. Why? Tough talk on immigration, which served as a deterrent. In his last year, and then he had the home country agreements where he was facilitating deals where people kept processing in their own borders, within their own borders. His Remain in Mexico, pressuring Mexico to put troops on the border with Guatemala and the border with the U.S. His last year, border encounters were at 400,000, okay? Now,
and it occurs to me, we don't have anything similar to that over here. Like, we don't have a Remain in France. In the UK, the Channel is the major route of entry for migrants who make that very, challenging journey across through European countries and then to the French coast, and await opportunities to come over in these flimsy little dinghy boats to cross the Channel and see if they can successfully survive the journey and make it through to the UK. So I guess I think the previous governments have tried to put something in place to, have people have the French border patrol sort of make it difficult for them to get onto the boats, although we don't have anything clear like a Remain in, our comparison would be a Remain in France. I'm sure they've looked into options like that. There was a major issue just before the elections with the Conservatives they were trying to put a deterrent system in place where they shipped people over to Rwanda. They had an agreement with Rwanda. It went through, I think it was the European High Courts or one of those organisations that we're signed up to, and they deemed it as unsafe, although the government at the time weren't having that, and they found ways to get around that. They were even considering breaking from the courts so that they don't have to follow those rules. Essentially, they spent a huge amount of money fighting the whole thing in court, and they spend a lot of money when they have to have not investigations. When they pay for these organizations to research and look into the viability of these things. Just to say, it just cost a lot of money, but they were determined to to push this thing forward. And in all the years it took them arguing and putting this thing together, when they actually had it in place, as far as I know, to date, they only managed to fly one person, deport one person from the UK to Rwanda, and they went voluntarily, from what I understand. They had the target of something like 200 people or 500 people a month, or something that many have said would have a minuscule effect on the whole immigration situation. So when you compare what's going on in the borders in the US and our issues over here in the UK, I mean, there's major issues in every European country, or at least developed European country. When it comes to immigration, though, there's a particular desire for people to make it through to the UK. So the question has often been asked, well, if you arrive at, the first viable country in Europe, why not stay there? Well, for some reason, it's always been the case that many people, their journey ends when they arrive in the UK. It's the preferred country of choice in terms of European immigration. Immigration, yes. I was going to say migration. Well, it is a form of migration, I guess, for many.
The UK government announced a new immigration policy.
Those who travel to the UK by illegal and dangerous routes, including by small boats across the Channel, may be relocated to Rwanda, where they will have their asylum claims considered.
The first flight was scheduled for this week, and it's faced legal challenges.
The Court of Appeal said it wouldn't intervene because it said it had no lawful reason to overturn the decision on Friday from the High Court, where a judge has said that he wouldn't put an injunction in place.
Tuesday's flight goes ahead, but this matter isn't going away. The policy faces a judicial review in July, and while that process plays out, many people are still cramming into small inflatable boats and making the journey from France to England. Already this year, more than 10,000 people have done so, more than twice the equivalent of last year. Most arrive with the help of people smugglers, most will apply for asylum, many will be accepted. But the government wants to stop people reaching the UK illegally, and the plan to fly some arrivals 4,000 miles to Rwanda is part of that.
This innovative approach, driven by our shared humanitarian impulse and made possible by Brexit freedoms, will provide safe and legal routes for asylum while disrupting the business model of the gangs.
But from the start, the policy has been met with a range of opposition.
I do not support the removal to Rwanda policy on the grounds of legality, practicality and efficacy.
Theresa May raised 3 issues. The Archbishop of Canterbury had another.
There are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot.
The former Brexit Secretary, David Davis, has called it moral delinquency, and The Times reported that Prince Charles privately called the plan appalling. However, Boris Johnson has again justified the policy.
This is about making sure that we break the business model of criminal gangs who are not only risking people's lives, but undermining public confidence in legal migration.
And if the business model of the gangs is broken, then arrivals will reduce. But that's not happened yet. Since April, over 3,500 people have made the crossing. Numbers haven't dipped at all, though, as this French official emphasises, it's early days.
I think it's too early to measure the impact. Regardless of the announcement, I think smugglers will watch to see if this measure is actually implemented. That's what might dissuade them.
It might dissuade them, but the UN is unconvinced.
The last time this was tried, it ignominiously failed when the Israelis moved Eritreans and Sudanese to Rwanda. They simply left the country and started the process all over again. In other words, it's not actually a long-term deterrent.
In this case, the UK government argues it can be a deterrent. To prove that, the policy needs to remain in place, and for that to happen, it needs to be deemed to be legal. The government says it is.
This agreement is comparable with all our domestic and international legal obligations.
The UN, though, told the High Court it is unlawful. Now, in the case of the first flight, it goes ahead. But this will continue for several months. The government also accepts that whoever is on the plane isn't coming back, as Mark Easton explains.
The Rwandans will do the process. They will decide whether that person is a genuine refugee. If they are, they will be then entitled to remain in Rwanda.
If they aren't, they may seek other immigration routes to stay in Rwanda, but they may be deported. And the UK's policy is now being judged against the UN Refugee Convention. The UK is a signatory. It reads, no one shall expel or return a refugee against his or her will in any manner whatsoever to a territory where he or she fears threats to life or freedom.
Months of gridlock and days of parliamentary ping-pong, the UK government's Rwanda asylum bill is finally to become law. The House of Lords eventually conceded late last night, withdrawing the final amendment that was holding up the legislation. It's a relief for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who hopes that, barring any last-minute legal objections, flights to Rwanda could begin within 10 to 12 weeks. Official figures show the backlog of people waiting to be removed from the UK rose from nearly 1,800 in July last year to more than 50,000 a week ago.
So, looking at what's going on in the US, and particularly there's a particular interview I saw with the mayor of New York. Now, he's been experiencing some issues of late because he upset the Biden administration, Mr. Eric Adams, and they've made things difficult for him. And it appears to me like they're giving him the Donald Trump treatment. And the funniest thing about it, it doesn't look like he doesn't look like a soft type of character. You know, he doesn't look like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and can't hold their own when it comes down to it. When he first began out, and I saw quite a few interviews with him, and he was pretty much right in step with the rest of the party, and you could say he was sold on the whole woke activist type approach to politics. And then when they started to bus over migrants from Texas, and New York being a sanctuary city, and the bills and social and cultural issues started to pile up in his city, just say things didn't seem to go very well from that point on for him. And eventually, as a form, what appears to be a form of punishment, the Biden administration have, investigated him and linked him to some I think it's something to do some corruption charges and all kinds of things. Somebody who they've already pretty much nailed to the cross, you could say. For these very same charges, they've linked him to the same cases. They're giving him the Trump treatment, to be plain and simple about it. The funniest thing that I've observed is he seems to have had that come to Jesus moment, or whatever they call it, and like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, and it looks to be what's going on with, it appears to be what's going on with Cenk Uygur at the moment, and a Kasparian. And I'm just throwing out names of liberals who are pretty much familiar faces and have fairly large followings, who've seemed to have seen some kind of light and are starting to warm towards some of the more logical narratives that you tend to hear coming from the right side of US politics. So some of it is a bit kind of obvious, because you could say Trump's now returning to the White House and he has the ability to pardon, and Eric Adams does not. If there's one thing I could say about him, he does not come across as not a sharp person. He comes across as a very smart dude, he can be if he needs to be. And right now, I think the gloves are coming off. He's getting into his stride, and the way I see him handling journalists who throw stupid sounding questions at him, and he just comes back at them in a clear and concise way. Excuse me. And he seems like he's in fight mode, and he's extending an olive branch, or he's leaving the door open, and showing an interest in meeting with the border czar to hear what the ideas are and see where they can come together and work on these problems as a collective. And that, to me, sounds like what you would expect to be happening in politics. Of course, in practice, it doesn't work that way at all, because it's always about opposing the opposition's ideas, whether they're good or not, for the population that you're supposed to be representing as a political leader, which is always very strange. So when you see somebody kind of like approaching it in a sensible way, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Although, that you could see there's probably clear motives behind it. He might be looking to get a pardon from Trump, so any kind of closeness that he can create between his position and what Trump is doing, it can only work in his favour. And at the end of the day, I don't see nothing wrong with that. If you're actively doing your job well and bringing something positive to the people who depend on you to serve them, essentially improving people's lives, if that's at all possible in politics, I don't see nothing wrong with you benefiting individually in some kind of way.
The question now is, what can Trump do to solve this crisis? And we have somebody who does not fit into the definition of people who are a head scratcher as to why they've been given the position by Trump they've been given. The man that we have tonight is arguably better than any man he could have picked within his reach, okay? Incoming border czar Tom Homan. It's good to have you, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
The way I laid it out, pretty straight?
Yeah, there are a few things I disagree with you with, but I think it's more important, and you look at the numbers on the Biden administration, I care more about the numbers he released in the country more than I care about the deportation, because he released millions of people into the country where President Trump didn't. As I just explained, there's a system. There's a system in place in this country. There's laws that were passed by Congress, enacted by Congress, and signed by a president. And all the hate coming right now to the president and myself, all we want to do is enforce the law. And we're at a place now in this nation where if you want to enforce the law, you're a bad guy. And I think the president's been pretty smart about prioritization on this. And look, I'm telling you, if we don't secure the border, I testified about this last time I testified.
Yep. Talking about New York City is probably the largest sanctuary city in the United States. The mayor there, though, is not in favor of that. Democrat Mayor Eric Adams. He believes that it's time to come together in a way that's not making him popular. Listen.
Here, committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. And I would love to sit down with the border czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
I don't know why that makes him some kind of traitor, by the way. In New York City, 60,000 undocumented migrants are wanted for deportation because they have been convicted of a crime or are facing criminal charges beyond the illegal entry. I don't know what they've been convicted or charged with, but over 1,000 of them are suspected of being gang members. So, will Homan meet with Adams? What does he believe can be done? And I also want to ask him about one other thing, which is unaccompanied minors, which were a problem under the Trump administration last time, as well as they are now. So, Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan. Welcome back, sir. I hope Thanksgiving was good. I wish you and the family well for the holidays.
Thank you. Same to you, Chris.
So, is Adams right? Will you work with him, and is there a fix?
I will meet with Eric Adams. I've yet to talk to him. I actually plan on calling him tonight, but I'll probably call him right after the show. But he's reached out to me a couple times. I've been on travel, but I plan on calling him either tonight or first thing in the morning. I certainly will meet with him. I'm looking for partnerships. I'm not looking for enemies, and I think we both have the same concern on the rising illegal alien crime rate in New York City. I want to help him.
Adams had a message for those who might be shocked that the Democratic mayor of New York City is willing to cooperate with the Republican president to deport bad guy migrants. He says, Google Barack Obama, Google Hillary Clinton. Adams insisted both Democratic Party icons supported deporting migrants who commit crimes.
I made it clear that I'm not going to be warring with this administration. I'm going to be working with this administration.
Mayor Adams announcing that he has reached out to the Trump administration's new border czar, Tom Homan, to hear his ideas about the deportation of immigrants. The mayor says that Americans voted for Trump because of his immigration and border proposals, and it's his duty to help fix the border crisis.
We cannot ignore the fact that the American people have communicated to us loudly and clearly. We have a broken system they want to fix.
The mayor also making clear that he wants to work with the Trump administration on how best to get migrants who commit crimes out of the country and out of the city.
You got a guy, he's on camera shooting a police officer. I don't want that guy in my city. You know, plain and simple. You got a guy that rapes one young lady, gets out, and go rape another person. I don't want them in the city.
When immigrants are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back!
This as a coalition of elected officials and immigration rights advocates called on New York officials to invest $165 million to provide legal services for people who might be targeted by the Trump administration for deportation.
And so what we're doing here is making sure that people who have a legal recourse, the people who are in our country right now, whether it's 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years, they're protected by the Constitution. They should be protected by the Constitution, and that is why we want to make sure that we have the attorneys necessary.
Now, the mayor also argued that New Yorkers had paid a very steep price for the migrant crisis. The city has spent $6.4 billion to shelter asylum seekers, money, he said, that could have been spent on many other things, like hiring 1,000 cops, guidance counselors and social workers for schools, parks workers, and summer youth employment programs.
That was informative and interesting. There's always sometimes more obvious and other times less similarities between US and UK politics. Obviously, we're both developed countries, and they're also going about this close relationship, and you got the historical origins and the birth of the USA, and when the independence was gained from the UK, and so that is in the DNA of the two countries. In a more practical sense, we're everywhere. We're affected. What happens in the States, it soon migrates over here, and occasionally the thing turns around and happens in reverse. So I find it's always a useful thing to keep an eye on, and it's interesting the difference between the UK chess game, you could say, political dramas, and how the whole thing is played out in the US. Quite interesting. So I hope this was interesting for you. You've been here with myself, Owen. You had yet CornerSpeak. Be good, be safe, be creative. We out.